I've just replaced my 30-year-old garage door. This is the first door that I've installed. This video should be helpful for someone who is considering doing their first installation. I'll go over some things that a pro may not think to mention because they do this all the time. Ripping out the old door was not too difficult. I'll put up a video on how to do that. I suggest reading the installation instructions and inventory all the parts before beginning the project. Most likely you will have to purchase additional hardware not supplied with the door, and if any key parts are missing, you could be stuck with a half-built door. Check out the rollers that came with the door. If they're the cheap ones like these that don't have any ball bearings in them, I recommend upgrading them. I upgraded mine to 10 ball bearing rollers with steel wheels. The nylon wheels are quieter, so if you want a quieter door, go for the nylon wheels. If you are replacing an existing door, look at the condition of the existing door jambs. Mine were 2x4s, and the lag bolts were going to be pretty close to the edge of the wood, and I was afraid that it might split the wood when I installed the lag bolts. Another problem that could be encountered is that the existing holes from the old tracks may overlap with the positions of the new holes for the new track, and you may not be able to get a good bite into the wood with the new lag screws. The door is built by stacking sections on top of each other. It's really critical to get the bottom section of the door level. Don't use a short level like this one. If there's any kind of wave in the panel, you'll get an inaccurate reading. Use at least a 2-foot level. A 4-foot level would be better. And make sure that the bubble is centered in the sight glass. Use some flat metal or some paint stirrers as shims to get the door level. When a new section is stacked on top of an existing one, you'll fasten all the hinges that hold the existing section in the new section together. Some of the hinges will have 2 tubes on them. Ensure that you put the roller in the correct tube. There's 2 ways of holding the sections in place while they're stacked in the opening. You can take a 3.5-inch nail and temporarily nail it on an angle into the door jamb. My opening is 8 feet wide, the same length as the door sections. So if I tried to tack them into place, they would just fall through the opening. I installed the vertical tracks and used those to hold the door into place while I stacked the sections. If you decide to use that method, install only one of the hinges with rollers and install the roller and insert the section on an angle and hook the wheel of the roller into the track. After the section's in place, install the opposite hinge and the roller into the track. Allow a little space between the front edge of the door and the door jamb, maybe a 1/8 to 1/4 inch gap. If the door is directly against the jamb, it's likely that it will bind up. Stop molding on the outside of the door opening will seal the gap. Use a level to make sure that both the door and the track are plumb. Take measurements at a few different places along the track. The tracks are pretty flimsy and they can bend. You could get a false reading. Allow for a 1/2-inch gap between the edge of the track and the edge of the door. Do this on both sides. If both the track and the door are plumb, then that 1/2-inch gap should be consistent all along the vertical track and the edge of the door. When you've stacked all the sections except for the top one, measure from the top of the second to last section to the top of the vertical track. Do this on both sides of the door, and both measurements should be equal. If they're not equal, adjust the tracks until they are equal. Leave about a ½ inch gap between the floor and the bottom of the vertical track. That will prevent the track from rusting. When it's time to stack the top section onto the door, it's a good time to install the horizontal track. I had existing hangers from the old door, and the hole provided by the factory to fasten the track to the hanger was back here. It wasn't practical to move my hanger, so I drilled a new hole in the track. It's critical to have a 1-inch bolt at the end of each track. If you don't have something to stop the door, it could roll right off the end of the track. If installing new track hangers, ensure that the hanger material is strong enough to hold the weight of the door, and that the hangers are screwed into something that can also support the weight of the door. It's important to have a cross support piece on the hanger. If this piece of the hanger can move, then the track could spread apart and your door could fall down. When you bolt the horizontal and vertical track to the flag bracket, there'll be a lot of play. Use a square to make sure that you have it positioned correctly. There'll also be a lot of play in this direction. Make sure that the flag bracket is plumb before you drill any holes. Place a level in the center of the horizontal tracks to ensure that they are level. Do a final check to ensure that your vertical and horizontal tracks are square. Measure from the lower right corner of the track to the upper left corner of the door. Then measure the opposite diagonal. Both measurements should be the same if your door is square. Measure on a diagonal from the top of the flag bracket to the top of the opposite track. Then measure the other diagonal. And again, if the measurements are the same, your horizontal tracks are square. Because my wall's a little crooked, I had to put some shims behind the one flag bracket to make everything square. Now that the horizontal track is installed, you can install the top section of the door. Install one of the top brackets and roller, and then just angle the section in so that the roller slips into the track. When the section's in place, install the other top bracket and roller. The top brackets will have an adjustment to adjust the top roller position. Adjust the position of those rollers so that the top section of the door has that 1/8 to 1/4 inch gap between the door jamb and the front of the door. Get some help to lift the door. You may want to just lift the door halfway and prop it open, and check that the rollers aren't sliding out of the hinges. In other words, that you haven't made a mistake with the track and the door doesn't fall out of the track. After the door is open, use a couple pairs of locking pliers and clamp them onto the track below the bottom roller of the door on each side. This will prevent the door from rolling back down. When the door is open, you can install your safety cables and extension springs. I won't get into that because perhaps you aren't using extension springs. I do have a video on my channel that shows you how to change out extension springs. That may be a help. If everything is square and you have extension springs, they should be stretched to about the same location on each track. I hope you found this video of how to install a garage door helpful. A thumbs up is always appreciated. Click on the channel name Know How Now to find other videos. And thanks for watching.